Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. Today, we're going to be looking at another one of the Druid Spirits. This is the last of the Druid Spirits. I've already done the Oak Sage and recently the Heart of the Wolverine. This one is the Spirit of the Barbs. Now, the Spirit of the Barbs is basically thorns. And up until recently, it used to be a damage percentage return, and now it is a flat damage return. So it has been changed. Now, what does this mean? Well, they wanted to make thorns a little bit more useful. And part of the issue with thorns is that number one, the monster had to actually hit you, which was an issue, depending on which form that you take. So, for instance, as a werewolf, you basically have no defense. So, like, you're going to get hit all the time. Spirit of the Barbs actually works pretty damn good on a werewolf because you're just constantly getting hit. Whereas on the bear, on the other hand, with tons of defense and it just generally doesn't get hit anywhere near as often, it doesn't really work as well. So depending on your character, depending on the defense of your character, depending on the block chance and various other mechanics, attacker takes damage of thorns tended not to do very much damage unless you were getting hit all the time. Now, they changed it so that it becomes attacker of takes damage of now, which actually functions whether or not you get hit. Actually, connecting the attack. So it will proc even on an attempt or a miss, which is actually very interesting, which means that it will proc more often than not. Now, even at level 1, it actually does more than enough to just like completely kill most monsters in normal difficulty. If I go to normal difficulty here, just to give you guys an idea, I can walk around in normal difficulty, like say Black Marsh, and most of the monsters will actually just one-shot themselves on me. Spirit of the Barbs has a ridiculous amount of attacker takes damage of. They don't even actually hit you, by the way, so like most of the time they're just completely missing. In fact, I'll even go to the bear form, so I have 8,000 defense. And you'll notice that they're not actually hitting me. They're just attempting to hit me, and the attacker takes damage of is affecting them. This does mean that it's going to be more useful than it was before, because before you had to actually be hit. It is physical damage, unfortunately, though, which does mean that it is subject to resistances. So if a monster has a particularly large amount of physical damage resistance, or they're immune to physical damage, it's going to do basically nothing. In hell difficulty, it doesn't really quite work as well. And I think this is important because attacker takes damage of, while it does work, there are some concerns. So let's go ahead and dump 20 points into it, just so that we have a decent level here. So we're running, 473 attacker takes damage of on this bad boy right now, which is a pretty decent amount of damage, especially when you consider that I'm dishing out only 601 on my lowest hit, so I'm dishing out about a little close to the lowest hit that I'm currently capable of at this particular moment. Unfortunately, this is not affected by any kind of enhancement of damage, although you can apply amplify damage to a target, which will enhance the amount. Another way that you could potentially enhance the amount of damage that the monster takes is by utilizing the bone sunder, which reduces the amount of physical resistance that you have. Now, Spirit of the Barbs no longer returns damage, but there are some other abilities that you could combine with Spirit of the Barbs that do return damage, like Thorns. Thorns still returns damage, and Iron Maiden also returns damage, and that can function for that particular purpose. Let me go ahead and grab this. So the reason why we're going to grab this is because it has amp damage on it. So when you apply amp damage to a target, it decreases their physical resistance, which in turn increases the amount of return. So let's find a monster that's physical here. And as you can see, they are hitting me and they are taking damage. Now, one of the main problems that I've noticed with Thorns is that despite the fact that it does a pretty good amount of attacker takes damage of, even in hell difficulty, and I'm pretty sure this is hell difficulty P8, Just double checking. Oh no, we're currently on P1. Alright, so in P1, you can see that it does a pretty decent amount of damage. In Hell difficulty, though, the monsters have a pretty crazy regeneration. And I'd kind of like to show you this. So, if I take my bear up here, and, do I have... Let's make sure that I've got everything. Alright. If I take my bear up here and I grab a couple of these monsters and I let them wail on me, one thing you're going to notice is that, yes, they do take damage. In fact, let me go ahead and use hunger here. I'm just trying to steal my HP back. Alright, so what you'll notice is I've done a lot of damage to them based on the thorns, right? But take a look at their HP. Alright, their HP is slowly regenerating over a particularly long period of time. It's actually percentage based. So the more HP they have, the faster they will regenerate. And it's been my experience that with Spirit of the Barbs and other Thorns-like abilities, one of the main issues is that they will just regenerate pretty much all of their HP back in no time. Whether or not you're dishing out the damage to them with the Thorns, you know, quickly. The other main drawback of Thorns, or any type of attacker takes damage of abilities, is that, well, it just doesn't apply the kind of damage that you would like. Quickly enough, because it is highly dependent on the attack speed of the monster that's hitting you. So they hit at a relatively low speed, and right now I have Decrepify, and Decrepify slows them down even further. So anything that slows down the speed of the monster is also going to then therefore slow down your total damage output with the Spirit of the Barbs ability. If you combine it with something like Thorns, which is actually a pretty decent combo, you can make something like... let's see if this diamond bow is 3 sockets. We could just make it right now. You could use something like a edge bow. So an edge bow is one way that you could add in more thorns into this. And edge is tier tal am, I believe. So we need tier tal and an am. Unless I've forgotten my rune words. So now we have level 15 thorns along with the Spirit of the Barbs. So let's see how level 15 thorns works with the Spirit of the Barbs. Now the problem with this is that they have to hit us. So thorns does require that you actually be hit to cause the effect to actually dish out the damage. Let me go ahead and grab this juvie here. And we're going to stand right in the middle of all these monsters. I'm going to use this guy to steal my life back. So as you can see, even though thorns will dish out damage, you have to be able to actually take the damage. The more times that you're hit, obviously, the more HP you're going to lose, and it's just like a give and a take scenario. That's why, of course, that I died, because I'm sitting in the middle of all these monsters, and yes, all the monsters are getting hurt by my attacker takes damage of. All the monsters are getting hurt by my thorns, but I'm also getting hurt by this at the same time. I've also lost a lot of tankiness because I can no longer use Oak Sage. This is another downside of the Spirit of the Barbs. So in this process, you're kind of stuck. Now, one thing that you can do, which actually works out pretty nicely, is you could use a Summon Druid. So this is a pretty easy thing you can do, is you can go grab a full summon crew. Obviously get all your wolvies. You'd grab your ravens, your bear, of course your spirit of the barbs, and by the time you're done, you've got a pretty sick army, right? You could probably also tag in a mercenary, and you could also use bramble armor. So I believe I have a bramble armor on this guy. So bramble also has thorns, and one thing that you could do is you could stack the two together. To get an even higher level of thorns than you would otherwise normally have. So I'm going to take this bramble. We're going to throw this in here for my boy. And let me grab a Jalal's too so he has something to put on his head. Alright, so now we have a bramble armor. And we have a Jalal's. This is going to bring us up to a very nice level of level 20 thorns, plus the level 15 thorns on the edge bow. So we have a total of level 35 thorns.
At your service.
And we have a level 26 Spirit of the Barbs. So let's go ahead and summon all our doojanks here. Let's get our army rocking. And once you have an army going, then you don't have to take the damage yourself. I think this is the most important thing with Thorns, is that you kind of have to find a way that you can survive and dish out the Thorns damage at the same time. The wolves and the bear tend to be one of the better ways to do it. And we take our little army here with our Spirit of the Barbs, and we can set them loose. Now we have the Thorns damage being applied by our army, as opposed to by ourselves. The Spirit of the Barbs is doing its job, the Thorns is doing its job, and so forth and so on. We don't have to worry about like defensive problems either, because our wolves are probably going to get hit a lot. And we specifically don't need to get hit. Now in this situation, you notice how our monsters have the amp damage on them. Well, Thorns has a huge return. So our monsters having amp damage is a good thing. Another thing that you could do is you could potentially have amp damage on a mercenary. This is another interesting way that you can increase the total amount of damage output. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to decrease the physical damage reduction of the monsters that are hitting you. Then you also want to, honestly, increase the amount of damage that you're taking, as your wolves are taking as well. You don't want to slow the monsters down, so things like Decrepify will actually hurt the overall damage output, which is why I would recommend that you avoid items like Reaper's Toll, which has Decrepify, or any other Decrepify items, because slowing down the monsters means that they are going to attack less frequently, and they are going to proc the effect even less. The interesting thing about Spirit of the Barbs attacker takes damage of is it does actually stack with other attacker takes damage of modifiers. So I've actually tested this pretty extensively, and if you have attacker takes damage of from any other source, it actually does stack. So, like, for instance, let's see if we've got any attacker takes damage of items on our character. It's been a little while. Why am I don't got that on there? I'm not even sure where my attacker takes damage of 144 is even coming from, to be honest with you. Attacker takes damage of 404. Oh, that's right. I forgot. So when they changed Thorns, they actually made it into a dual-purpose ability. So it actually does both now. So it used to do just a return percentage. Now it does a return percentage and a attacker takes damage of return as well. which means that you get both effects, and they actually stack as well. So when you go and you walk outside of town, and your Spirit of the Barbs procs as well, you should be looking at the Thorns bonus for both. So that's 20 Thorns plus 15 they add together, which means you have level 35 attacker takes damage of, which is 404. And then you spawn your Spirit of the Barbs, which is 581, and you're looking at 985 attacker takes damage of, which is a pretty freaking ridiculous amount. And you can, of course, stack that with other attacker takes damage of items. Now, I've actually already done this. We might as well show this off. I have a whole video on this, but I believe his name is... It's been a little while since I've actually pulled him up. I have Farty. Farty Sparty. That's a great name. Don't sleep on Farty Sparty, my friends. I've got so many characters in here. There he is. GGM Cactus. So GGM Cactus is an entire idea based around attacker takes damage of. I have every single form of attacker takes damage of items that you could possibly put on a character. I have the ridiculous attacker takes damage of 136 Blade Barrier. I have attacker takes damage of in my Crown of Ages. Seems to be missing for some reason. I also have the Iron Maiden, which also gives more reflection. The attacker takes damage of 99 on Razor Tail, and so forth and so on. And by the time you're finished, you end up with a pretty crazy amount of attacker takes damage of, which actually ends up being... I'm at 260 right now, and then with the Thorns ability, which you're... right here. As you can see, we get attacker takes damage of and a return at the same time. So you toss that up, and then you end up with a pretty crazy 624. That could potentially be, of course, stacked with the Spirit of the Barbs to hit even higher numbers. And because attacker takes damage of no longer requires you to actually be hit, you can build your character tanky and still get the effect. The main issue, like I said earlier, is just that the regeneration of the monsters seems to outpace the Thorns effects. And one thing that I've noticed is that if you can apply Prevent Monster Heal, or if you can apply Open Wounds to the target, which will prevent the monster's regeneration, the Thorns will kill a hell of a lot faster, just in general. You also want to avoid Decrepify as much as possible to make sure that the monster's attack speed isn't being reduced. And Amplify damage on the monsters is the best way that you can increase the damage tremendously. Especially since most monsters have physical damage reduction in the first place. And this is really the issue with Spirit of the Barbs, is that no matter what, you're still dealing with a pretty hefty reduction in the physical damage. So even utilizing our amazing Spirit of the Barbs, where we have our 985 attacker takes damage of, most monsters in Hell difficulty will reduce that by 50% right off the bat. So you're looking at like 442 damage. And then on top of that, they regenerate extremely quickly. There's got to be a way I can show this off without just immediately getting my butt handed to me. Hold on. Let me grab some healing potions so I can kind of show you just generally, like, how quickly the monsters regenerate. Especially in P8. That's why I really want to show this off, is P8. So let's go ahead and up this. And let's pick a good place. Let's try Canyon of the Magi. Usually you can find a decent number of monsters here. Alright, we got some beat'ems. Woo! Now, these are monsters that got damaged by my Thorns. And here he is hitting himself over and over again on the Thorns. So they could kill themselves pretty quickly, right? But check this out. Watch how quickly this monster regenerates back to full. This guy's already at full. This guy is nearly at full. This one right here, for some reason or another, is not regenerating. I think it's because I hit him with Prevent Monster Heal. So Prevent Monster Heal is on the bow. So the difference between a monster that has been tagged with Prevent Monster Heal, like this guy right there, so he is now no longer able to heal himself. He will eventually kill himself on the thorns. The monsters, however, that are capable of regenerating are going to just, as soon as they stop attacking you, or as soon as they walk away, and even while they're attacking you, are going to just slowly regenerate all their HP back, no matter what. And I think, honestly, one of the things that they could really do to try and fix this is they could maybe make thorns apply open wounds or something. If thorns applied open wounds, they wouldn't automatically regenerate all their life back like this, and so quickly. And as you can see, with Prevent Monster Heal, the monster HP stays gone. So having that Spirit of the Barbs up is actually tremendously powerful, even in Players 8, versus specifically a monster that cannot regenerate. So it's not that Thorns doesn't do damage, it's that the regeneration almost completely counters it. Anyway, I hope I've given you a little bit of insight in how you could potentially use Spirit of the Barbs to your advantage. What particularly, what kind of characters you might want to utilize it on. The fact that it doesn't require defense to apply its effect anymore, so you can build the tankiest monster in the world and run around with Spirit of the Barbs. It's actually a pretty good plan, honestly. Like, if you built a character that was so tanky that he couldn't take any damage, and you just went with, like, maximum attacker takes damage of, and maximum Spirit of the Barbs, a hell of a lot higher than this, by the way. Level 27 is nowhere near the highest level that you can possibly get. You could end up with like level 40, 50 Spirit of the Barbs if you really stacked on the plus the skills. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're just talking about Spirit of the Barbs. And as always, keep watching.